estate, wealth, and overall health. I'm Merilyn Nunno.
And I'm Adriano, and today we're going to be talking about client expectations. I feel like that's something that's very difficult in today's real estate market. A lot of people who might have been on the market maybe a year or two ago feel like their housing price should be at a certain point. We go in for consultations, and sometimes the valuations that we're presenting aren't maybe what they're expected. So we have to kind of position them to a point where they're at a selling price where they're going to sell. Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, when we go in, I think it's really important just to manage expectations up front, and we're letting all the clients know that right now, even though there's been some interest rate cuts, which is definitely favorable for both buyers and sellers, there's still, patience is the name of the game, and we want to let everyone know that it is still taking time. The market's not what it was back in 2022, where, properties were selling within a week and they were selling for hundreds of thousands over asking price. So I think a lot of it is managing expectations. Even if I were to list my own property tomorrow, I have to tell myself and keep, all that self-talk. I just have to remind myself that it's going to take time. And, even just a lot of buyers we're finding right now, which we'll get into more in detail, but a lot of buyers, there's just hesitation every year around election time that happens. A lot of mortgage renewals are coming up. The bank released a statement, RBC, that 1 million mortgages are coming renew next year. So I think there's a lot of hesitation right now in general, just with the cost of living and everything else going on.
Yeah.
How about you, Adrian?
Yeah, no, I find, when people, it depends on what type of person is moving. If it's like an upsizer, I always tell them, listen, you might not get the same price as you did, two years ago, but you also should be able to buy a little bit better if it's within like a few months of each other, right? You don't want to wait too long because the market can always change. But yeah, like I feel like the condo market right now is very, very tough. Lots of inventory. Certain areas like maybe the toy factory lofts or something like that, where there's not much that comes up, those tend to sell quickly. But if it's a traditional building, or if your maintenance fees are high, like we're struggling with that a little bit too. That does affect price, as much as people don't want to address the elephant in the room. As maintenance fees go up, or if there's special assessments,
that's right.
Your price is gonna suffer for that, right? And we have to say that. We try to be upfront. Sometimes people don't like that, but we try to do that. So that's what I'm seeing with our conversations on our listing appointments that we go
for
to.
sure.
Yeah.
And the good thing is, we actually, this past year, we've seen it all. We actually had one property that we sold. We thought it was going to be a tough sell. She had bought the property with me back in 2019, and it actually had a special assessment that was running for 2 years. So we were able to, there was a little bit more negotiating required in order to, make that transition with the buyer and seller a little bit more smooth, but it did require a little bit more negotiating. So what we ultimately were able to do was negotiate in a fee that our seller absorbed the first year of the special assessments, so that it was an offset for the buyer. I think we're seeing a lot of that, especially like you said, with the condo market. There's a lot of inventory. And I also think, tell me if you would agree with me, one of the reasons why we're seeing so much inventory is also because a lot of people were buying pre-con, so pre-construction. They were buying off of, floor plans, and once all these properties were now registered, a lot of them, investors just decided to rent them out. And now what's happening again with the interest rates being higher in the past, it just, the rents, that's another thing.
The numbers aren't making sense right now for renting. And
the rents just don't cover once you factor in property tax and maintenance fees and just, maintenance on a property, right? Like, we're getting calls and it's like, Merilyn, oh my gosh, I have a flood in my basement, panic, and our phones are just, on fire with, once you have an unexpected expense come in with a rental property, now you're in the red, and it just doesn't make sense, right? So we always say, if you can hold on, the market should get better. That's another decision that you have to be comfortable with. Talk with your accountant, because sometimes there could be tax implications.
I agree. It's with the rental market, it's a little bit different. The numbers don't work. Rates, people get qualified at 2.5%. Now they're trying to qualify 6 or even 5%. The numbers don't work. The one good thing, if there's a silver lining to all this, is that these rules that are coming in December, should help the first-time buyer that's just trying to get into a condo, because there's so much inventory there. A lot of the new rules, and we can get into those at a later date, that are being implemented for first-time buyers should allow them to kind of at least buy something, so they don't have to rent and get into the market and become a property owner. So that is a positive thing, and hopefully that takes away some of that inventory. But in terms of the investors purchasing, it's difficult right now. It doesn't work if they're not there.
Now, I know you said we'll get into that at a later date, which we'd actually have a special guest who's one of the top, mortgage brokers around, which we'll announce.
Oh, thanks. That's a surprise to me too. So that's great.
But why don't you just briefly, let's talk a little bit more about that. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit, give them like a sneak preview, a sneak peek at what's coming.
It's not 100%, but what they're planning and implementing as of December 15th. So first time buyers, if you don't have 20% down and you're considered high ratio, you can only have a mortgage up to 25 years. They're allowing you to stretch that to 30 years, which should bring your payments down, which is a good start. Secondly, if you don't have 20% down, you can't purchase anything over $1 million because you need 20%. They've changed that 1 million to 1.5 million. So that'll give people with, an extra 5 or 10,000 the ability to kind of push. Now, that's probably going to push the market a little bit, but it'll also give, buyers a little bit, first-time buyers, a little bit more access to properties that they might not have been able to purchase. And then the other good thing that they brought in too, and I think that's implemented now, is that people with mortgages, so if you already have a mortgage, what is it? You don't have to qualify for the stress test to move mortgages. You just have to qualify at that rate. So that's going to help move people around and help banks stay competitive with mortgage rates between one another, because people can actually move their money around a little bit more. So these are all things that should benefit the market, but in certain areas with low inventory, I think that's going to push the prices, unfortunately, like on the housing and the detached segment. Yeah.
Spring is definitely looking a lot more positive, and we're hopeful that that will work out.
Before we wrap up quickly, Merilyn, I had this, so we have a client and they call us and they're like, I read this article in the Financial Post. Prices, sales are up 44%. My condos should be up 44%. And then I actually read this whole article, and what it said is that sales were up 44% from last year, meaning I think 4,000 properties sold in October, and now 6,000 sold this year. What he failed to read and mention was that they said that also 15,000 new homes had come on the market as well. So the inventory was there. So even though more sales are happening, there's more inventory coming up. And it also said that the sale price from last year was about neutral. Maybe it gone up 1%, maybe it's gone down 2%. So I always tell my clients, and I always try to put this on Instagram, it's very important to read the news properly, and also talk to a professional, talk to a realtor about your local neighborhood, because when there's a blanket statement about Toronto's up this much or the GTA has increased or decreased, that doesn't not necessarily mean that your neighborhood is following that trend. It could be more, it could be less, depending on where you live. I don't know if you feel the same about that, but those are my kind of tips.
Yeah, I think certain areas are still, it all comes down to supply and demand, right? Obviously, if you have a building that only has one option available for sale, and you have 3-4 buyers that are just waiting on the sidelines to get in, then the probability of that one unit, that's the only unit available, is going to sell a lot quicker than if we take a look at, for example, 90 Park Lawn, when right now there's holding, 6-7 listings. That gives buyers a lot more choices, although it's, pretty big building. So there's a lot of different factors that play, but I mean, it's always the three: location, condition, and price. And I know that it's really hard. Like, look, as a seller, no one wants to hear, let's drop your price or let's adjust your price. But we are seeing a lot more. Like, we follow the market, especially our local market, almost daily. And we are seeing a lot more like price adjustments, PCs, we call them, price changes. So that is something that, is happening.
Yeah, but the funny thing is that there are certain neighborhoods, like Allenmead was a perfect example, where, they priced for multiples. They got 2 offers. They kind of sold where it should have been. I thought maybe a little bit more than what it was, but they sold in 6 days in multiples firm offer. So that is still around. It's just what kind of strategy do you want to use, and it really depends on the neighborhood that you're in. So.
And once again, we have a listing just one street away, and that is a street where there is a lot more sort of conformity happening too. So that actual product, there could be, you know, many different things, especially with all the new, you know, approvals that have been in place. Like you could put a laneway house in the back, or maybe not a laneway, sorry, maybe like a carriage house in the back, and you can definitely build up on that lot. The lots are quite bigger. So there's a lot of different options there. And I think that buyers are looking for that now, you know. They don't want that. They want something that's unique and that they can, if they need to rent out the basement or have that extra income, that possibility is there. That also helps them, back to what we were saying about qualifying with the banks. Because let's face it, a lot of people are, you know, right now, like worried about money, financial, you know, financial insecurity is a real thing. And I think we have to be mindful of that when we are working with buyers. You never want to overstretch anyone, and
no.
You know,
you don't want them coming back in a year saying, "Hey, you sold me a house I can't afford. Please sell it. Sorry, you're going to lose money." We don't want that, right?
Exactly.
But I guess before we finalize and sign off, I always tell this, guys: if you're looking to buy right now, it's a great time to buy. You can get deals. You know, when people are all nervous about buying, it's like the stock market. When everyone's running one way, if you do it and you make an educated decision to purchase something that works for you, in the long run, it will be good. Everyone's concerned about the variable rate, but the fixed rate is, you know, at almost 2 or 3 year lows.
Yeah.
They're in the low 4s, so you can get good rates on a 3-year variable fixed. So,
and also, Adriano, you just recently renewed. Why don't you share with everyone what you renewed at?
Yeah, so I renewed. I have a rental property, and I was able to get the 3.99, which I think is fantastic through Scotia. I don't think they're going to be offering that anymore, and a 4.09. So you have to be able to ask questions.
And what was the term on that?
It was a 3-year variable or fixed, and the reason why I said that took fixed is I figure in maybe 2 years interest rates will come down on the variable side, and then when it's time for me to be close to renewal, I can figure out whether I want to go on the variable side or see where the fixed rates are and then lock in.
Or maybe sell everything and retire.
Capital gains, I don't know, maybe. But anyways, from Merilyn and Adriano here, we want to thank you for tuning in today.
Thank you, everyone.
And until next time.
Well, next week we won't have a session because we are off to Mexico with we're taking our top agents down for a treat, but we'll definitely be back in 2 weeks, and we have a very special guest coming on. We'll announce that later on.
So if you have questions, please feel to reach out, comment on this, and until then, take care of your real estate, your wealth,
and your overall health.